You're watching BUTV, Bloomsburg University Television, the home of the Huskies.
Buckle up, boys and ghouls. It's time for another exciting episode of Frightening Friday.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter in our series of ongoing commentaries on how we brought the television series Frightening Fridays to life. My name is Erik Sprowls, and I was the series creator.
This is Ben Willis. I played Cedric and was part of the cast and crew-wide writing team on the show.
And a wonderful penguin you played.
Yes, penguin indeed.
and you look so good in it, Hux.
I like to think of it as a cross between Alfred and a couple other butlers.
I always pictured it more like the Pawtucket Patriot from Family Guy. You know, like you got the hair, but you're in a tuxedo. You know.
True, quite true.
Somewhere along the way, it wasn't English. It became more of like a New England accent, I think.
You really think so?
I don't know. That's just me. I mean, I just because you always so this way, but it wasn't.
I don't know if I could. It's been so long. I don't know if I could pull Cedric up from the depths of my mind right now. I'm trying to think of how to do this accent again.
Try narrating this commentary.
I might.
As Cedric.
As Cedric. Oh gosh, it's been what, 2 years now? Oh, jeez.
Well, I'll tell you what. You prepare that. We're going to be looking back for the next however long this last half hour on how we brought the show to life. Episode 2, that is. And give you some behind-the-scenes election now hints and insightful insight, I guess, into Election Now, which was our episode.
It was a lot of fun putting that title together, I'll tell you. I remember that in the room. It was like we sat around for like a half an hour trying to figure out what the hell are we going to call this episode with the election. And I think I finally sat down. I don't even know where I got it from. I think it was like I just pulled it out of all those cartoons and all these things where he says like, Election Now. I mean, it's so corny and cheesy. I'm like yeah, that works.
Well, you know what? We have to credit, and I got to be honest about this. I don't know what you remember, but I got to credit Joel Stevenson, who played Igor, for coming up with the idea for this particular episode.
Oh yeah, and Joel was like awesome, and we'd be stuck sometimes, and he just. When he was there, he'd come up with something that would usually break us out of the rut we were stuck in.
I remember too. I remember he wrote a whole treatment of this episode, or it wasn't really. Oh yeah, he wrote a whole treatment. It was a summary of what he wanted it to look like, and when we did it, we said, "All right, let's head with it." It was the 2004 election, so we got lucky that year.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was.
It's been 2 years. I mean,
yeah, it's been a long time.
Shortly after this, I can't remember. Did we do this in the fall, or was this the first of the spring semester?
This was done in November of 2004.
This was still in the fall semester. Okay.
Right. It was. We had just done our
election. I think wasn't it? It was like the weekend or a couple weekends after the election.
It was pretty timely. I do remember that because it came right on the heels of our premiere, which was on Halloween. So it was right early November when this came out. So the election for. Between George Bush and John Kerry had just happened.
I still chuckle when I think about that thing.
I know everybody. You know, it's funny. Everybody seems to forget about the Bush Kerry. They always say, "Well, didn't Al Gore run the last time?" No.
Oh.
Anyway, we're down here in the video vaults, which is right next to the main stage.
Which is the main stage. Thank you.
It's the modern of miracle editing. It's like okay.
And the front door and the bathroom.
Yeah. In fact, I think there's an episode coming up.
Gas chamber.
I think there's an episode coming up where we do a thing where it's like
you mentioned. I think Igor actually mentioned Igor and Damien, which I think we haven't seen Damien yet. I don't think Igor and Damien and Gigi actually mentioned it. I think in the final episode, they're like, "Oops."
Yeah, they let him go by accident.
Wait a minute, which door was this again? They all look the same.
We got away with a lot on here. It was the front door, the bathroom, the torture chamber, the gas chamber.
Yeah. Where Where'd Numbskull get to, though, at this point?
Well, you know, I remember when we first came up with this idea, I didn't want Numbskull there the whole time. It was nice to have him on once in a while, but, you know, he can only sing and dance so long. I remember Mike DeShane didn't like him.
2 songs or 3 songs? He had programmed.
It was actually 4, but,
4 songs?
yeah. But if you look at the crafty editing in this scene, I got to tell you, too, and this is my fault entirely, but I didn't really care. His scepter disappears and reappears.
Yeah, he's not holding it now. It's like, of course, if you watch carefully a lot of the other episodes, that happens. And I missed that staff, though. I was so pissed off when that disappeared over Easter break. We still have no idea what happened to it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. The scepter that he uses, and you'll see here in a shot coming up, what you've seen it. It's the skull and the stick. It disappeared from the studios, and we never did find it. You know what's funny? I never was able to find a replacement.
I did some internet searching myself, and I searched for skull staff, skull and a stick.
Here it is.
And, yep. There's a. That mask too. I was lucky, however, a couple Halloweens ago. I think it was the fall after we did this. Oh, here comes the big part of the argument where I made my. I forgot that. Did we miss it yet?
No, I don't think so.
We haven't come to my Freudian slip,
no, not yet.
Which is so cleverly edited out. If you watch it, you can kind of see it. Unless you've redone it, you might.
I think it's coming up soon.
I'm a method actor. I have to say that. I draw on my personal emotions when I'm trying to do Cedric specifically. And there's just a line.
There it is.
So much a better host.
If you watch my lips, I say actor.
Yeah.
and I got this knot in my stomach after I said that. I'm like, crap! I didn't mean to say that, Mike. I'm sorry.
You know, the good thing about Frightening Fridays was the fact that we can hide a lot, because when Creepy talks, you can't see his lips, so you can just put in whatever dialogue you want. So whenever you were talking, you could tell that we switched it. But there's so much that I switch with Mike playing Creepy that you'd be surprised.
Splice dialogue here. If you notice, of course, his hands never quite did match up with his speech in the first place, so you don't really notice it when he does change. You know, he's like moving his arm, and big gesture in the middle of a word. It just adds to the character.
The funny thing, too, I always enjoyed, and it kind of wore off, I think, around mid-season. His mask is electric.
Oh yeah.
And once in a while, he'd
third or fourth episode that finally broke.
Yeah, I think he kept bumping himself, and the light would go off.
There's a button in his chest that we ran down his neck, and he smacks it, and it makes it blink. And we'll talk about it in the next break.
Yeah, and I remember too. No. Yeah, we're gonna keep going. This is segment 2.
Oh, I see.
And we've edited out the movies through the miracle of modern. We don't own the rights. And that's a beautiful castle, by the way.
Gosh, yes.
And it was nice. I found that that's in Ireland, I believe.
Oh, here's Numbskull again.
Now, speaking of Count Numbskull, Matt Colosimo, who you'll see later in this episode as Agent Mahler, our parody on the X-Files, was the voice of Count Numbskull. So he had a dual role on the show. He would play. Well, and what do you mean look like?
Oh, thank you. See, that tuxedo took actually a lot of work. That costume took some thought. That tuxedo was from the Bloomsburg University concert choir. So the tuxedo, the shirt, the shirt, the jacket, and the pants are all part of that uniform. The vest, which if you take a really good look at it, is actually black suede. That was mine. I got it just by itself because I have to have that black suede.
Oh, no kidding! I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the tie is actually my dad's part of the barbershop chorus around here, and that's actually one of his ties from their uniform. So it's this mishmash, and I said, it works. I look like this 19th century butler.
Well, the thing too, I think too. Listen, now, all those sword effects, I got to give you props. You made the sound effects.
I don't know remember where, and I have to tell you about this as we're coming to this next segment too. I don't remember where you found those swords. How did we get a hold of those in the first place? There were a couple of pot metal, and I know they're pot metal because I'll tell you later. Pot metal, like brass painted decorative swords you'd find over some cheesy fireplace in the
Now you're talking about these swords here?
No, the ones that you hear.
I was gonna say these are made of wood.
Well, were they wood? Yeah, they're like
really
fiber
nice.
wood. They're like compressed fiber, which we actually broke though. We broke these, and actually the swords that we used to make the sound effects, we actually recorded over those microphones you see there in the foreground.
Well, you know, I think though, Ben, the nice thing about the show is the fact that it was so bargain basement. We were just like the movies we showed.
Oh yeah, true.
You know, and you had talked about, well, you know, you piece the tuxedo together.
Look at this thing. My God, I mean, what is that? It's a piece of plywood with.
Yeah, it's a battle. Well, you know what? The battle axe, the knight, some of this stuff I brought with me to Bloomsburg when I had done another show. Yeah. And then she's still wrong. She's beautiful. She can play sets of dits. Michael, who plays Creepy, would argue and say, play a dits. But I think the beautiful thing about it was the fact that we had such a bargain basementness we brought to it. Like, I brought the armor from another show I had done. It was a horror host show, and the axe, and you put the suit together. And if you look at Creepy, his was like a mask, and you know, yeah, exactly. I think that's the pure genius about us having so much fun.
Getting back to those swords, I hate to tell you this, but I don't know where those swords came from, but we got them somehow. But they weren't technically part of the university's property, as far as I know. So actually, after the show disbanded, I went in and I rescued them because I wanted to use them for a project I did a year later, which was this.
You talking about the brass ones?
The brass ones. The pirate. Well, just wait. I call it the Pirate Radio Hour. At the end, we had this big sea scene, and I said, well, I'll just use those same swords because they had such a nice sound. Third episode into making the sound effects, the one cracked and snapped in two. And I'm like. I looked at it and I'm like, oh my God, this is the cheapest metal you can ever find. And so for a long time...
You're better off smacking some concrete stones together.
Would have been. And for a long time I used this shattered piece of the sword and the other good sword. And then, of course, my friend Dave Raleigh, who you'll see has a couple bit parts in one of the later episodes. I think it was the Sexy Saturday Night. What was that?
I love this between you two, where he won't let you give a word in edgewise. And he's like, Hoki Makadaka. And then he starts speaking in other English and other languages and that kind of thing.
Anyway. Buenos dias. The greatest. We that's sucky. You know. Sprechen Sie suck.
Sprechen Sie suck.
We were saying that for weeks afterwards. You suck. was our catchphrase for many weeks in the writing room afterwards. That was kind of our fallback line for Creepy for Mike's, you know, if we couldn't think of, you suck, man.
It was kind of nice too that since the election was going on, we had this idea. Some of the stuff we had was kind of timely once in a while.
I mean, nowadays, you know, you kind of have to think back to when we were putting this together to get a couple of the jokes. Because I mean, I think, I think it's the next episode we got to. I can't think of. Gosh, yeah, this the speech. I was trying to be.
It says pompous butler.
I was trying to. You said. Yeah, I think your direction was do your best Carrie impression. And of course, you know, who could listen to Carrie for more than 5 seconds before falling asleep or, you know, having an aneurysm or something.
Oh, so, I do remember that now. Yeah. We were talking about how he kept saying how he had a plan and then he never gave a plan.
Yeah. I said, so it's just, my plan is a good plan. And it's a good. I still can't do the Cedric voice. This is taking me off now.
You mean you have to get a little English back? I'm telling you, it was more New England than it was English.
I actually the Halloween after that second year, the year after we did this, I actually.
Look how he's sleeping.
The sound of it.
Pushing to take the role instead. Cedric, you never really answered questions.
Yes, well, in that case, I would like to introduce my running mate for the show here.
This was nice. I like the running mates we had.
Unannounced, totally, you know.
And Leah was not camera shy at all. I mean, or Gigi, her real name, Leah Wagenblatt. She was not camera shy. She loved it, and the camera loved her too.
Bells, sounds, both say the same thing.
We had so many
In
problems
fact,
with those microphones that ticked me off.
Well, we were still in our infancy stage. I mean, this is our second episode. The audio there's a couple of segments where the audio is horrible.
Two totally different podiums, two totally different microphones if you look at it.
That was one of them right there. I had to put translation because we couldn't hear what you said because somebody in the control room had shut off the microphone. But I want to give props to Leah here because she invented the name for Gigi.
Yeah.
And, well, I actually called it Gigi, like G-I-G-I, and she said, how about she spells it G.G. Because she's so stupid, she spelled it with 2 periods. And it just hung it. We left it in.
Here's Creepy's running mate. He tries to claim.
Joel is great at doing this kind of stuff. He's just perfect.
You can hear it. I don't know if he does it again. Okay.
Joel is great. Did you ever look at his MySpace page?
I mean, he's the best guy I've ever known in person. To do the Nixon impression, I mean.
Oh, yeah, that was beautiful. I like when they call him the running mate and he's running. I like how Gigi didn't break character here. She didn't break character. She's dusting you off.
Yeah. We've done that a couple times, and then for some reason she decided to dust my face off at that point.
Oh, well.
And I'm standing there, I'm like, stay in character, there's feathers in my eyes.
Wow. That came through like a picture. I think it's because, one of the things when we were shooting this, because we were so in our infancy stages, particularly in this one and the last episode, the first couple, we weren't really sure how we wanted to do the lighting. We knew it had to be dark and creepy, but when you dark and creepy at a college level, you can't really see.
Plus the Stone Age cameras we were using, unfortunately, at the time. I mean, this is recorded on, nice, clean digital video, but we were using NTSC cameras that, weighed 2 tons.
Yeah, and they weren't even digital.
No, they were analog cameras, and we had to, white balance everything. Of course, white balance kind of gets, futile when you're dealing with, clouds and clouds of smoke, which you can kind of see down the bottom there.
We did get the hang of the fog, probably in the last few episodes. Here, we just kind of fogged it up, and when we turned the lights on, you lost everybody. It became really whitewashed. And we learned as the series went on, we shot it at the ground, it would come across more like a dry ice effect. It'd
stick to the ground, just roll along there for some reason. Like,
was this your?
Well, it was a fog, technically, wasn't it? It was just something that. Oh yeah. It was an actual fog. It was like this little heated fog that rolled up and it would eventually disperse. Of course, it smelled. God, what was I don't even know what it smelled like. It smelled. Now I just identified
it was putrid.
The smell of the fog machine.
Oh yeah, fog has an entirely different smell. People don't realize what.
Like bubble solution.
I was thinking more like Joel's shoes after a long day of shooting.
You know what that smells like.
Hey, was this your book?
I don't know. I know I have one. That might have been my book. I might have brought that in.
Scary Stories.
Scary Stories. Yeah, I think that is my book. I love that thing, especially the illustrations in that book. They were some of the most terrifying ink drawings you'll ever see done. And it's a children's book. I mean, oh my God. It was a book meant for children, maybe not to read, but, well, yeah, to read, because it's whole big print. It's collected folk tales, and really some horrifying stories. Oh. I
see we had repaired our problem when he brought his hand in the air. In the first episode, you could tell the red gloves would only run down almost to his elbows.
Yeah, I think we got something.
I think we eventually had him wear a long sleeve black shirt to hide his skin.
We finally got a shirt for him because in the first episode he'd raise his arm and it'd be white underneath there. Of course, it was thinking ahead to which episode was that?
What's that?
Oh, excuse me, I'm burping here.
Well, the people at home know what you've had for dinner. You might as well tell them.
Hawaiian pizza.
Did you get it from? What was the place we always ordered pizza on these? No. There was another La Fontana.
Well, we tried that once. That's where I bought you guys pizza from when we had that writing session.
That's right. We would actually shoot this, and we would actually shoot this on a Sunday, and shoot like maybe hours into the night, and we'd all order pizza from this place.
From Oip's. Well, during the shooting, we ordered pizza from Oip's, and that's where I got this from the night. But at one point, and unfortunately, Fontana's kind of changed their sauce recipe, so I don't buy there as much anymore. But this one point, this was right when the La Fontana restaurant was coming in, and I work at WHLM. At that point, we had our studios right above this Italian restaurant, which was actually part of the reason we moved out, because it smelled like burnt garlic all the time. It's not very conducive, talking on the air at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to do news when you got burnt garlic everywhere. If you can imagine that. So we moved out of there, but at that time we said, hey, here's this pizza. And they were damn good at that time when they had just moved in, but then I think the owners had gotten someone else to make the pizza by that point, and now they've changed and they're not quite so good. But
you know what? I got to say this before I forget, because I noticed this while you were talking about some stuff. Whenever they show Count Numbskull, occasionally in the background, you'll see one of our crew members, either somebody on camera, and it's funny because now that I'm looking at it, how we would cast this show. Later on in other episodes, you'll see Christina Crafty would play Agent Scully, our parody in the X-Files, and you can see her in the background floor directing with headsets on, or Heather Sage.
How I got on there. I mean, I actually came in, I wasn't planning to even be on the show. I'd come in with the intent of working behind the scenes.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that. How did we cast you? Do you remember?
You came to me and said, can you do a butler? I said, I think I can.
That was our elongated, very tedious process of casting for this show.
You look like you can be our butler. I'm like, sure. Why the hell not? Can you play the harpsichord? I think so.
You know what's funny about this scene here? When it goes off, this kind of reminded me of remember that cartoon with Bugs Bunny where somebody's drawing him?
Oh, you mean Daffy and
a Daffy Duck and Bugs is drawing him?
Yes.
For a minute there, that reminded me of that.
Somehow he's still got sound coming over.
Welcome right back after this movie.
Is that how we really casted you? I said, hey, stay buddy, you want to be on TV.
I came in and it's like, I came into the first meeting and or it was either that or, because I had signed up, this was back, of course, when I was still in the mass communications department, and I actually changed majors after we were done with the show. I'm not going to go into that, but I had seen this cast list up on the wall. Fuzzabell. Oh God, Fuzzabell.
Yeah, I'm gonna remember Fuzzabell. You finish your story.
But we had I was in mass comm, and I had I said, well, I really am into radio stuff, but I'm here. I might as well get involved with some television side of things. It might be useful down the lane. And I saw this when you had come in and you were doing this program. You said. And you had a bunch of different shows and options up on the air. I said, I don't want to do news. I don't want to do sports. I hate news. I hate sports. Oh, what's this? It's a Halloween-themed show. God, I love Halloween. My birthday's 2 days before Halloween. I've always loved it. And I said, this is perfect for me. And I've always loved working behind the scenes of a show. Not necessarily television, but stage show or anything. I'm happy, in front of the camera or behind the camera. I had come in with full expectation of running camera or running sound, specifically was what I was hoping for. And at some point, you came up to me and said, "Can you play a butler?" I'm like, "Wow, okay."
You did a nice job offsetting creepy. Did you notice how he sounded like Ringo on the phone, like one of the Beatles?
So random. It's always so random with that stuff that he'd be doing his voice
If you know what, I gotta tell you this story, and I want to get back to Fuzzabell. That little tiny print there, if you pause this DVD and try to read that, I put some subliminal stuff in there, because I wrote down like Igor, not Al Gore, and the writing is so entirely small that you're not going to be reading this anyway for all the longer it's on the air, or something like that.
Watermelon.
Before we get, I want to get back to Fuzzabell too, but this is our parody of the X-Files. We call them the Axe-Files, and it has Christina.
How was that explained? That was aliens.
Oh, it was aliens exterminating entities.
What?
No, wait.
Are you serious?
Agents exterminating entities.
Okay, that makes not much more sense, but it's more acceptable.
Well, that's why they're chasing creepy reapers.
Yeah, entities.
On a show where people turn invisible and drink invisible juice. We're talking about what makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, tell them about how did we come up with Fuzzabell?
Fuzzabell, that was your office number, wasn't it?
That was actually the phone number that we wanted. Well, yeah.
That was your office
Yeah, and you tried to figure out what it would spell.
Because we said, well, what's the number? Because we didn't want to use your private cell number or your house number, because it had to be something with an answer machine. I said, well, what's your office number? And you wrote it out, and we pulled out our cell phones, and we're like, the hell, that spells nothing. There's nothing. The closest, most logical looking word we could come up with was Fuzzabell. Of course, we couldn't have like an 800 number.
That actually was a phone number that if you were to call that number that night, you could still get to my old office number.
Don't know if it suggests you do that. He'd probably say, "Who the hell are you?" I don't know. I haven't met the guy, but whoever they have in position.
As a side note here, we shot all of this right outside the studio. If they were to turn left right now, they would go into the studio.
Studio A. And I don't know if do we have the posters up at that time? No,
I don't see it yet.
But in later episodes, if you see them walking down that hall, you may have edited it out, especially in the last couple of episodes. Excuse me, I'm burping again. This is the last segment, though, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's the last segment, episode 2.
Wrap this up here. Powder and the goblets, one of which broke eventually, of course.
Did you ever watch King of Queens?
Not often.
I just now, when I was editing this and doing some remastering on this DVD series, how much Christina Crafty looks like Leah Remini.
Yeah.
She looks like the wife on King of Queens, Carrie. Doug and Carrie, she looks just like Leah Remini. It's amazing. I thought this was a nice little ad lib. He's trying to give you poison. You keep... Now, you...
I kept toasting. I went through a couple different toasts. They all ran along the same lines, but I tried to change the wording every time just to try to get something different out of it. And I have to say, this whole show was really an experience for me. This is the first time I'd ever dealt with any kind of improv in performance. I mean, when we came up, we had an outline, and we said, well, we have to say this. We have to get this plot point across. But I don't think we ever actually had... We had, at some points, we had definite scripts, pieces of scripts, like lines that we had to say verbatim just for some reason. But this was come up with that evening. 5 minutes before we were going to shoot the scene, we all sat down and we ran through it a couple times before we actually shoot it. And then we'd run through it about 20 more times before we got it down. But it was really fun trying to, not necessarily come up with it on the fly, but try to do it without a script.
I remember, I give you guys all the credit in the world, too, because we'd write a treatment.
Pratfall.
Oh, yeah. I think I sped up the video there to make it slam a little bit harder. You know what's funny? You know what that was that Joel had on there? That used to be a Wizard of Oz costume.
The Scarecrow.
Scarecrow, yeah, and we ripped it all up and changed it.
That was one of the things we bought at the very beginning, wasn't it?
Yep. Anyway, I would give you all the props in the world, too, and I give Joel and Creepy and Mike and Leah and everybody, and there's Heather you can see in the background operating, and Christina, the Axfell agent. The control room, I'm probably back there waving like a loon.
Wire in the walls.
But yeah, this was all done as a treatment. We didn't really have scripts, and I said, okay, go out there and go get them, and you guys are like, huh? It's like getting shoved out on stage and not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, they have a show now, I think it's called Thank God You're Here, where they dress up all these...
Oh, yeah, I've seen it.
They dress up comedians in the costumes and just shove them into a set on stage with each other, and they have to figure out what the hell they are, what they're doing. Well, it wasn't quite... to me, it kind of felt like that sometimes when we're out there, and we have this really vague idea of a plot, and we had to try to hit these points and wrap it up in this segment. We had to do this by this segment. We had to still be funny. That was the thing. We had to come up with... I think uncomfortable silence was our best aspect in a lot of these pieces.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I don't know where we got this idea. Like, we made fun of BUTV, and then we
stole that from Family Guy, actually.
I think you might be right. On that one.
Sir, if I may suggest...
Then it's back to business as usual.
Election seems awfully dangerous, if I may say so. And if I may suggest an alternative way...
You know what, Mike brought up an interesting point in his commentary. He said, it's a shame. He says, I wonder whatever happened to all this set stuff and that kind of thing.
I've seen it. I've actually seen it. They still have all those rock walls, which, by the way, I love the way we were able to figure out that curve in the corner. Yeah. Because we actually ended up screwing that one of the other professors was freaking out about the fact that we were permanently affixing these panels to the studio wall, but we actually had to screw it across to make that curve, and they're still using those panels, although apparently they've just got it leaned up against the wall now.
Well,
so
the good news is
still using them.
the good news is everything except for the angel, the skeleton, the death angel in the background, and the walls, I managed to get a hold of and keep. You know what I was always happy with was the lantern up there with the fake flame.
Yeah, that was so fun.
That looks so good on television.
If you see it, especially once it gets through, whatever cable, what you're watching, even there, it almost looks real.
No, it does. It looks real, and there are other shots. It looks, and it's just nothing more than I think a Kleenex or something in there with a little flame that's lit and a fan. That's another thing. I think Leah put her outfit together too, entirely on her own. Yeah, her French maid outfit. So that doesn't. This was horrible.
Oh, wait, no, I rolled. I actually pushed him. He's like trying to not to knock things over.
It was so tacky. You're sweeping him, and he's trying to roll. Here's an interesting point. See this trailblazer here?
Was this at Stone Castle?
Yes. See, now this trailblazer here. 2 years.
Hotel in the county.
2 years after this, I was in an accident in that trailblazer, and it was totaled. Yeah, I almost died. It was horrible.
But yeah, this motel where this castle's is exterior. This initial exterior, I think we used the jail for the later exteriors. Exterior, we shot at Stone Castle Motel, which is actually one of the deadliest spots for domestic shootings in the county. There's been like,
oh, no kidding, I didn't know that.
Gosh, you do not, if you're local, you do not stay there. Just I think the year before we shot this here, it's this horrible story, but this woman and her kids were hiding there from her husband, and he came and shot 3 of them and then shot himself in the room. Like, well, there were some stories from a couple of the cast members when they went there. There was this, odd people watching them. They said there was some guy who had a panel truck and was throwing garbage bags from his hotel room into the.
Oh my God!
I'm like, oh my God! Why are you people? You are so lucky you're alive. I love how it gets progressively darker. Like took 6 hours to shoot that.
Well, actually, we worked it into the dialogue there. They said it was something about. Vernal equinox. She said it was the vernal equinox. That was they always did that kind of stuff on the X-Files. She'd always shoot his theory down.
They have an airport there, so there's this inexplicable windsock in the background.
You know what? It was a nice exterior that we got the chance to use too.
It's probably going to be there for another 50 years. It's one of those last great, roadside America. Is that it?
Yeah, well, the credits are rolling now, but this was our commentary for episode 2 of Frightening Fridays, and I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add before we move on?
About this episode? Oh, by the way, anyway, I didn't get to finish my story about the swords.
Finish it fast.
So we had these swords in the basement where we recorded the pirate show, and David ended up cleaning out his basement, and they threw them away.
Well, fortunately, I was able to keep a lot of the props in the show. I know some of the people managed to, but well, I tell you what, this was a nice commentary, another chapter. If you want to hear more, you can hear it on the next disc.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
It'll be episode 3 is next, so stay tuned.
Home of the Huskies.